This beer braised chicken, called Pollo alla Birra, is from northeastern Italy, where being close to Austria and Germany, beer plays a bigger role in the local cuisine, and it makes for a rich and sweet sauce that goes perfectly with this tender chicken. Let's begin by generously sprinkling salt and pepper over 6 drumsticks. About a half teaspoon of each should get the job done. Rub it in and flip them around to ensure each part is well seasoned. This recipe can also be made with chicken thighs, but drumsticks are most common. Next, take a 1/3 cup of flour and add about 3/4 teaspoon of sweet paprika before mixing it together in a dish with high edges. Then take each drumstick and roll them around in the flour until they're coated evenly. Add about 1 tablespoon of olive oil and 1 tablespoon of butter to a very large skillet or Dutch oven on medium heat. Place in the chicken and let them sear for about 2 to 3 minutes or until golden before flipping them over. And try to sear at least 3 sides. Not only will the flour help give it a nice color, but it's also going to help thicken the sauce later on. While the chicken is cooking, you can remove the ends and cut 1 large yellow onion in half before removing the peel and slicing it into half moons that are about 1/3 of an inch thick. Once the chicken is browned all around, remove them to a plate. Go ahead and toss in the onions and turn the heat down to medium-low. Mix them around with your tongs to break them apart and coat with the residual oil. Add a pinch of salt to help them cook faster. Also, you can toss in another dash of paprika before letting them soften for a few minutes. Once they're looking fairly golden, make room in the center of the pan for a smashed garlic clove, and add another teaspoon of oil to help it fry. Let the garlic cook and break down for about a minute before mixing it in with the onions. Lastly, throw in a couple sprigs of fresh rosemary and a few sage leaves. Give it one final mix before cracking open your beer and deglazing with about 1/3 cup. You can really use whatever you have on hand, but ideally something light or a Pilsner. Now switch to a wooden spoon to get any bits off the bottom of the pan, and then you can nestle in the chicken, having the meaty part of the drumsticks face towards the center of the pan, which will be the hottest. Make sure to add some onions and herbs on top of the chicken. Pour in the rest of the beer, but the exact amount will depend on the size of your pan because you want it to go about halfway up the chicken. So I ended up using this full 20-ounce can. Now, turn the heat down to low and cover with a lid, but leave an opening so the steam can escape and the liquid can reduce. The chicken will braise for about 1 hour or until it's just falling off the bone. At about the 20-minute mark, you can remove the lid and give them all a flip before putting some of the onions on top again. Now we can leave the lid off for the remainder of the cooking time and make sure it remains at a nice simmer. After we give them the first turn, this is the perfect time to cut up some potatoes, which is the classic side for this recipe. Here I'm cutting 3 peeled russet potatoes into large cubes. I like to slice them in half lengthwise and cut each half into thirds and cut those into thirds again in the opposite direction. Add the potatoes to a large baking sheet and pour over about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Toss them around and then space them out evenly before placing them in the middle of a 400-degree oven, which is the perfect temperature to make sure they don't get too dark before the inside is nice and fluffy. I like to take them out about every 10 minutes, giving them a turn to make sure they're browning evenly. These will take about 30 minutes, so they should be done just before you're finishing the chicken. Speaking of which, after 20 minutes on the second side, flip them back over to cook for another 10 minutes on the original side. At this point, you can also remove any large rosemary sprigs and sage leaves. Once you see that it's starting to separate and fall off the bone, you'll know it's just about ready. Remove the chicken onto a plate once it's cooked. Turn the heat back up to medium to finish reducing the sauce all the way if needed. You want it to be a similar thickness to gravy, which the flour and the onions breaking down will help contribute to. Make sure you're checking the potatoes and give them one last turn before finishing for a final 10 minutes. Once it's looking saucy, add 2 tablespoons of honey and salt to taste before giving it one final mix. Now add back the chicken and toss it in the sauce so it can soak it up and cling on. Finally, take out your potatoes and season them generously with salt before tossing them around. Serve with a nice bed of potatoes on the bottom of the plate and place the drumsticks on top. Finish with some extra spoonfuls of sauce and chopped parsley if desired. Please leave any questions or thoughts in the comments and let me know if you plan on trying this one out. Thank you for watching.